We're just 1 month away from the start of Philadelphia Eagles training camp, but even with that much time to go and OTAs being over, we still have a lot of interesting stuff coming out about the Eagles in recent days, including a potential X factor for the Eagles this season, as well as another new Eagle who has been largely underlooked and underrated this offseason. Also, could the Eagles take a step back in 2023 for these reasons outlined by this analyst? And Jalen Hurts is still proving to be hungrier than ever to get back to the Super Bowl with these recent comments from Jason Kelce. So we're going to dive into all that in this video today, so let's not waste any time and get straight into it. The Philadelphia Eagles clearly have one of, if not the most talented roster in all of football. Now PFF certainly seems to think so because, as we've mentioned on this channel before, they rank the Eagles #1 on their list of ranking all 32 NFL rosters. However, that doesn't mean that the roster comes without any weaknesses, and easily one of the biggest weaknesses is the safety position, as that position is going to end up looking completely different than it did last year, as the Eagles lost both their starters from the 2022 season in free agency. First, it was Marcus Epps, who signed a 2-year, $12 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Epps was probably one of the weaker links on the Eagles defense last season, but nonetheless, he was still a solid player who was coming off the best year of his career, and losing him definitely created a hole that the Eagles needed to fill. But no doubt, the more devastating news came when star safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson decided to sign a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Detroit Lions about 1 week in free agency, a move that no doubt shocked Eagles fans, because all offseason we were hearing about how much the Eagles wanted to keep Gardner-Johnson, and that he was probably also going to get a big contract in free agency, but of course, neither one of those things ended up happening, as he decided to leave the Eagles after they had already spent a lot of their money in free agency elsewhere, and he headed to Detroit on a deal only worth up to a total of $8 million and $6.5 million in guaranteed money. And now at this point, the Eagles had a huge hole to fill at the safety position, so they went out and made a couple moves, first adding Tyrell Edmonds in free agency, and then getting Sidney Brown in the draft, both who will look to contribute in their respective first seasons as members of the Eagles. But perhaps the most important safety on the Eagles roster is a guy who was already here last season. And that guy is Reed Blankenship, the second-year player out of Middle Tennessee. Now, Blankenship is a really interesting player because he kind of came out of nowhere for the Eagles last year. I mean, this is a guy who was an undrafted free agent that the Eagles signed after the 2022 NFL draft, and he was really just expected to come in and compete for a roster spot, but of course he would end up making the roster after a couple impressive showings and flashes of promise during the preseason, but still, no one expected that he would make any sort of impact in 2022, but of course we know what happened from there. Blankenship came in for an injured C.J. Gardner-Johnson in a Week 12 Sunday Night Football game versus the Green Bay Packers, and in his very first meaningful snaps, he picked off Aaron Rodgers at a crucial point in the game, impressing fans in the process. And since then, he started 4 more games for the Eagles and played meaningful snaps for the rest of the season, including the playoffs. And Blankenship was really able to make some solid and impressive plays during that stretch. But now, we can fast forward to today, where with the safety position being in question, there are some people out there that keep calling Reed Blankenship a potential X factor for the Eagles this season. Now, in PFF's recent article that I mentioned already, that ranked all 32 NFL rosters and listed the Eagles as #1, they specifically singled out Blankenship as the X factor for this team. Authors Dalton Wasserman and Jim Wyman said this, quote, "Blankenship enters 2023 with a great opportunity to start after a surprising rookie year in which he finished with a 79.4 overall grade. He earned an 89.4 run defense grade, 4th best among qualified safeties, and made some plays in coverage, including an interception of Aaron Rodgers. The Eagles will still have an elite pass rush and excellent outside cornerback play. They need Blankenship to be the glue in the middle." Now, after reading this, you must ask the question, is Blankenship actually capable of being that for the Eagles? I guess we don't know for sure, and we'll find out, but so far, all signs have been positive this offseason. I mean, at OTAs, Blankenship was getting first-team reps at safety, making it seem like he's expected to start when the 2023 season rolls around. And at OTAs, Blankenship was asked how his mindset has changed from last year to this year, given that his role should be much different, and this is what he had to say.
Honestly, nothing's really changed. Like I said, I love the game. I'm going to play it as long as my body allows me to. And, rinse you every day. That's what Sirianni talks about. No matter what position you're in, I haven't felt that I've arrived yet. I'm still staying humble, staying hungry, and that's going to last, throughout my career.
Now, what Blankenship said here really makes me believe in him and what he can be for this team, because he mentioned that he still feels hungry and really nothing had changed for him from last year to this year, and that speaks volumes about his mentality because he's not going to get complacent. This was a guy who was an undrafted free agent as a rookie and had to fight for everything that he's got so far, so you better believe that he's not done yet. Now, in addition to these comments, he was also asked what the coaches asked him to work on this offseason and how he could develop himself as a player, and this is what he said.
I guess be more anticipate stuff was coming. Last year there's a lot of times where I was learning the plays and what position I'm in, but now I'm starting to be more, attentive to what's going on. And that's why I asked more in-depth questions of James, what's going on the outer edges. And now, Tyrell being with me and what he had in his past years and just learning from them.
I mean, judging by all this, it certainly sounds like Blankenship is ready for a bigger role this year. And you also heard him mention at the end of the clip there that he's also been able to learn from newly acquired safety Tyrell Edmonds. And this is a guy who I feel like has kind of flown under the radar this offseason, which I don't really understand because the fact of the matter is, he's been a really solid player throughout his career so far with the Steelers. I mean, he's not really a flashy player like that of a CJ Gardner-Johnson, but he really is just a good player that's going to get the job done, and that's what he's been able to do in his 5 years with Pittsburgh. And from everything I've heard coming from the Steelers and their fans, they were definitely not happy to lose him. And on the other side, from what I've heard from the Eagles, they seem very excited to have him, and I think he may surprise a lot of people this year. And then just to mention Sidney Brown real fast here, I think he could definitely contribute right away as well if he's given the opportunity. Now, do I think he's going to win the starting job in his rookie year? Probably not, but I do think that he'll get his fair share of snaps, and moving down the road into the future, I definitely think he'll be able to end up starting for this defense. I just think for at least this year, Blankenship and Edmonds will probably be the guys for the Eagles, assuming neither one just looks really bad and loses the job in training camp, which obviously I don't expect, considering what I just said about the other two guys, and especially Blankenship. So what are your guys' thoughts? Can Blankenship be the X factor for this Eagles defense? Let me know your opinions down in the comments below. Now, don't worry, we've got plenty more Eagles news to get to, but first, real quick here, I just want to say if you are enjoying this video and want to see others like it coming in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Around 80% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed. If you're one of those people, you've been enjoying the videos consistently and you love the Philadelphia Eagles, make sure you go fix that right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss when any other videos go up. I think it's a win-win for the both of us. Now, with all that being said, let's get back into the video. But now, moving on here, we have another Eagles free agent acquisition who, kind of like Tyrell Edmonds, has been overlooked this offseason, but he has a very real shot to make a big impact this year, and that is running back Rashaad Penny. And this is something that I feel like we could look back on and say, wow, that was a really underrated move by Howie Roseman, because really ever since we got DeAndre Swift, Rashaad Penny has been somewhat overlooked in the Eagles backfield, and that's because really everything we've heard about the Eagles backfield since then and in OTAs was about Swift and Kenneth Gainwell. No one's really even mentioned Penny, but just because this is the case, that does not mean Penny's not going to have a real shot to contribute this year. And Alex K of Bleacher Report seems to share this belief as well, as he recently wrote an article titled "The Most Overlooked Additions of the 2023 Offseason," and he listed Penny as the 5th and final guy on the list, writing, quote, "Fresh off a Super Bowl appearance, the Philadelphia Eagles made one of the more shrewd pickups of the offseason and instantly improved their chances of getting back to the big game by signing Rashaad Penny. The gifted running back was acquired on the open market for a bargain bin price, costing the club a mere $1.35 million for the upcoming campaign," end quote. And he continued on later saying, quote, "According to Brad Spielberger of PFF, no back averaged more yards per carry or yards after contact from 2021 to 22 than Penny. Now playing behind one of the NFL's top offensive lines in the city of brotherly love, Penny has a perfect opportunity to finally stay healthy and consistently produce at a high level." And I think really Kay summed it up perfectly in that last sentence. If Penny can just stay healthy for once, he can have a fantastic season and a huge impact for the Eagles this year, and I think he has a solid chance to do that because of the fact that he's not going to be relied upon to be an every down type back for the Eagles, as he'll likely split carries with DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott, making it much more likely for him to stay healthy. And as Kay said, we know what he's been capable of when he's available, and he's been one of the best backs in the league when he's been on the field, averaging over 6 yards per carry over the past 2 seasons. I mean, this guy has an incredible skill set, he's just been held back by injury, so if he's able to finally stay healthy and the Eagles use him in the correct role, I think he can live up to being on this list of the most overlooked free agent signings this offseason and have a great year for the Eagles. But now moving on again, we have analyst Colin Cowherd making his second appearance on the channel this week, saying the Eagles could potentially take a major step back this year because of, quote, blinking lights. Take a listen.
I know, Eagle fan, you know you're getting back to the Super Bowl, but there's a lot of blinking lights here. Now, we think Philadelphia is the best team in the NFC. I do. But this team got really good when Nick Sirianni said, "I'm giving up the play calling." Shane Steichen, who Jalen Hurts went from, "Is he any good?" to a possible MVP. Coaching matters. He's gone. So's the defensive coordinator. Oh, the schedule, by the way. 10 teams that made the playoffs on the schedule. So I think Philadelphia is really good, but there's some blinking lights. Old O-line. Lose your OC. Jalen Hurts moves. Schedule's brutal. No breaks in the middle. lost your best leading rusher.
Okay, so just to recap, he's saying that the Eagles might take a step back, but he also thinks they're the best team in the NFC, so I don't really know what argument he's trying to make, but anyways, the reasons he gives here are, one, that the offensive line's really old, which is not true because Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson are the only two guys that are old on that unit. The other three guys are pretty young, and there's absolutely no way that you're going to convince me that those two are going to be anything short of great this season, so I'll believe it when I see it, not concerned about that at all. He also said that losing our leading rusher from last year and Miles Sanders was a concern, which, come on, we got Swift, we got Penny, we got Gainwell, we got Boston Scott, we're going to be just fine. And then he goes on to say that losing both of our coordinators could be a big concern, which I've already talked about this in previous videos, including the last one, so I don't really feel like going too in depth on this, but just to give my quick thoughts on it, I really think that this is an overblown concern. I'm not really worried about it at all. I honestly think Sean Desai is going to be an upgrade over Jonathan Gannon, and then although I did like Steichen, I think it's going to be about as seamless a transition as possible going from him to Brian Johnson. I have no concerns about that whatsoever. And then finally, he says the schedule is much harder this year than it was last year, which is a very fair point, and I'm not arguing that at all, but I also think that the Eagles belong in that category of top tier teams in the NFL, and obviously those teams are able to win tough games and beat other top tier teams, so I expect that from the Eagles this year. Now obviously, yes, the Eagles do have more tough opponents on the schedule this year, and oftentimes they're playing them back to back to back, but it's not like the Eagles are a bad team that are going to lose every single one of those games. They'll probably win some, lose some, and they'll come out of it okay in the end because they do have a bunch of other games on their schedule that are very easily winnable. I mean, I personally have them winning 13 games this year, at worst 11 as long as they stay healthy. So yeah, again, just to recap, I'm really not worried about anything that Cowherd outlined here. And now finally, moving into the last thing that I want to talk about here, we got to talk about Jalen Hurts because he's just giving us more reasons to love him and be excited about him moving forward, as Jason Kelce recently had an interview with Jacob Sports where he said this about Hurts and the Eagles' Super Bowl loss.
You know, when you're the guy, you know, when you're Jalen Hurts, I know the way he thinks because we've talked about it. You know, he still beats himself up for this play and that play. It's like, dude, you had like the best performance ever by a quarterback in the history of the Super Bowl. You did just fine, right? But exactly. The reality is when you're that guy, if you're really a competitor, you think you control stuff. You don't want to acknowledge that somebody else or a field or officials, because once you start doing that, you start devaluing who you are.
I mean, you absolutely love to hear this if you're an Eagles fan, because this just goes to show you that Hurts is still very hungry. I mean, he doesn't care that they made it to the Super Bowl last year. He doesn't care that he got one of the biggest contracts in NFL history. He still just wants to win, and his mindset hasn't changed at all. And obviously, we know that Hurts isn't the reason that the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. He was incredible. But the fact that he's able to take accountability for his mistakes is great, because it's something that you obviously want from your franchise leader, and now he's going to do whatever it takes to get better and prevent those mistakes from ever happening again. And you just know that all he wants to do is get back in that position and finish the job this time. So obviously, I'm really excited about Hurts and just the entire Eagles team as a whole heading into this season. And training camp just can't come soon enough, and it's definitely been approaching fast, so when it gets here, we're going to be covering it with plenty of different videos, shorts, and live streams. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. By the way, thank you all so much for 15,000 subscribers. The support on this channel has just been absolutely unreal over the past few months, so again, thank you to every single one of you guys. Now I guess we're on the road to 16K, so if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit that button. And also, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like on it. And also, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below about any of the topics that I covered in this video. And if you want to watch another Eagles video talking about the Eagles and Cowboys' heated rivalry as of late, you can watch this video right here. Now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.